it is here. Rosh Chodesh is in Yesod. Every month, the new moon, and that's a holiday in which all these other things that we did during the year before, they sort of enter into Malchut, if you will, on Rosh Chodesh. The new moon brings that down. Shabbos represents Malchut, and that's the place where it finally comes down and is, if you will, incarnate. It becomes the 26 hours of time on Shabbat are like the 26 numerical value of the divine name Yud He Vav He. Yud is 10, the two He's are again 10, Vav is 6, so you have 26. 26 is 2 times 13. Echad is 13. Ahava is 13. Oh, you can do such wonderful things with that. And each time as you sit and you think about that, and you see, the oneness of love, it makes together God's name, you know? And that's the wonderful part of understanding this. If you follow the deeper structure of that, you get to see almost like in The Wizard of Oz, you know, when he's in that little room, there's a big scene out there, but what happens in the little room? So I want to talk about that part which the Kabbalists have talked about and said, this is the function of it all. Now, before I go on with this, I want to say something about working on the subtle plane. When I think back several generations, and I think of the Rebbes that existed at that time, the saints that were there at that time, and the way in which they were holding the field for the planet, for their people, so that whenever there was a problem, they would pray for it, and they would also steer things in a way, you know. This is what I like to call, it is like the sweeping at curling, you know. There is karma in the way, but when the people sweep, they can deflect it a little bit, not altogether. And if one could work on that scale, in the subtle realm, can you imagine how much work there would be these days dealing with all the conflagrations on the planet, all the pain that's going on, the people maimed in the hospitals, those who survived Nebuch, you know, in pain and so on and so forth, terrible. And then you start looking at the developing countries and they're saying, Gewalt, you guys, you want to send your goods, but you will not buy our goods. And so you are abusing us, you know. And so could you imagine what it would take to go into that place and to work on the subtle level to create shifts and changes? It isn't happening yet. To my knowledge, it isn't happening. You know, I usually get the invitations about these things, if they were happening, and I never got such an invitation yet. So I'm just wondering if you get my drift at this point about what I'm trying to say about working on the subtle level. It is like saying if somebody has, let's say, an addiction, and Nebuch is trying to go cold turkey. That's trying to deal with the addiction in the world of Asiya, on the ground level with the body. No, I won't do it, no, I won't do it, and it takes fantastic amount of will. Then there's another level, more subtle than that. What is the pain that he's trying, what is he trying to keep from himself that gets him into this addiction? You know, what's happening on the feeling level? And then What wrong idea does that person have that brings about the problem? You know, we think of Mary Baker Eddy. Alan, I'm thinking about this right now. Mary Baker Eddy would say, illness is a mistake. You know? If you were to think right, you wouldn't get sick. It's as if she got something that maybe the rest of the people didn't get the same way she got it, that the influence of thought on the matrix of how we are alive, you know, that this is very powerful. And that needs to be shifted, and so in that case we have to work on the subtle level, and it doesn't seem that you don't make an operation, you know, you don't give drugs, but you give such indications to yourself on the subtle level, and the shifts can happen, and sometimes miraculously, okay? So you can understand, we have gotten to that place, and there is still a higher level on which I can't even use words. And yet I know that the same way as the thought influences the feelings, and the feelings influence the action, so does that which I can't name influence the thought. And if people are trying to do it conceptually only, and not go to the Chokhmah Bina place of that, which is much higher than discursive thought, there's something that has to happen on the subtle plane. So now I've shown you how the year, if I handle the year according to the 10 Sfirot and how it is in the Kabbalah, then I can work on the subtle level, and each year, if I live with the calendar, how would I put it? I can recalibrate it each time how we need to do it. If you try and do it all at once, it's not going to work so well. And so you need to have, as King Solomon has said, for everything turn, 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 there is a season. And for chesed, this is in the spring, you know. And spring is here, spring is here, spring is here, you know. So it's a good time for that. And Shavuos and so on and so forth. And I didn't even put down the heavy times, the bad times, which are Tisha B'Av, you know, the time of the destruction of the temple. And it fits in a very important way, but I don't want to go there right now to deflect me, okay? So now we come back to what is to happen on Rosh Hashanah. So here is a teaching I got from my Rebbe, Reb Yosef Yitzchak of Lubavitch, and goes something like this. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra. The Lord of the world, He reigned as King before the world was yet created, anything was shaped, anything was created. So he asked the question, sins are, sages tell us, and it's very clear to us too, that ein melech b'lo am, you can't have a king without a people. So who did He, before anything was yet created, reign over? Good question. And this goes even deeper, because the rabbis raised a question. They said, you must never do anything to anyone else that's a liability for them. If it is unalloyed good, you can do that. For instance, if I were to go ahead and set something aside, and I say this belongs to Reb David, okay? And it's unalloyed good, in other words, tax-free money, for instance, then that would become yours from that moment on. Because zachin lo la'adam shelo b'fanav. The person doesn't have to be present in order to begin to own, to grab hold that he should own that. But ein chavin lo la'adam elo b'fanav. But if it is a liability, you can't lay a liability on a person unless you've gotten consent.